Hi everyone. Today I thought I'd make a video to give an update on Hydrate. So I introduced the stock a couple of times, but last I mentioned it was April 8th. So after that, it went for quite the run, nearly 100% in about 2 weeks, and it's pulled back a decent amount. So I thought I'd talk about it, but essentially the reason I made this video on April 8th is because they had a large partnership with a guy called Dr. Frank, and it got rid of a lot of the business concerns. I think the recent pullback is due to different business concerns, but essentially I'll dive into that. Before I get into that though, I want to mention that they released their earnings on April 30th after the bell. So on May 1st, we see nothing too crazy with the candle, just goes high, goes slow, ends the day down 2 cents. And then a decent sell-off the day after despite a really good market. Now, this has not been the type of name that's really correlated to market. It's basically independent. But why we see this sell-off, I don't think it's because of earnings. I think there's a different reason for the delayed reaction. And I shouldn't say delayed reaction. I think it's a completely different reason, but I'll get into that. So essentially, before I explain that, looking at their earnings, which is just for the full year 2024, and they'll have their first quarter earnings within a month coming, but essentially a bunch of business achievements. What matters is they grew the business 39% in terms of top line in 1 year, and good improvement on the loss basis. You don't want to be in a company that's too much of a loser for too long. They were able to be GAAP profitable in the very last quarter of 2024, which was decently expected that they would at least be near the break-even point. But the first two verticals, as you can see, growing very well, pretty good business in itself. But it's really the third vertical that has the potential and that we're really looking for. But this annual report doesn't really encompass any of that. This is just, I guess, a little bit of a check to see how great the old part of their business is doing, and since it's doing pretty well, I guess that helps that the downside is not too extreme. Like, it'd still probably be a lot, but not too extreme if the third vertical does end up blowing up. But essentially, pretty good revenue, as I mentioned. Last quarter profitable, that's always good. Nothing too special in this. What kind of matters here, the VSDH1, 400 plus start to consumer license holders. Same as last time. Would have liked to see it go up, but this is fine. And this is the current number, not the end of 2024, which is not bad. It's not amazing, but anyway, that's fine. So they have some business initiatives. They've been pretty good at hitting their targets. So what I like to see is, expanding the partnerships. I really like to see that they're actually planning to increase their pharmacy margins. But other than that, it's just nothing too crazy. The onboarding and supporting more nurses worldwide or nationwide for their Uber for Nurses kind of style platform. I would like to see that kind of have some success, because it does look like, in a sense, that it's kind of stagnating in terms of nurse numbers, and they're not doing any marketing for that. I do think that they were pretty cash tight before, and I think that this year it'll be much less of an issue. So if they could get a little bit of marketing going and really get their name out there, get more nurses on the platform, I think that would be very beneficial. But yeah, they can also potentially pursue acquisitions now, because they're a little bit more healthy in terms of the balance sheet, and because they have a really good network. A company that's not worth very much, acquired by Hydrate, could be worth a lot more with the network they would provide. Now, one thing that the CEO mentioned in the last, or a couple interviews ago, was that we'd be seeing his goal and projection, really, or just his goal, turn into a projection and guidance, and we could see some sort of guidance in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, he was pulling our legs. He didn't give any guidance. I really dislike that. Nobody's forcing anybody to give a timeline or to say when they're giving guidance. So for him to voluntarily say that it would come in the fourth quarter, then not provide it, I mean, that's pretty disgusting, I won't lie. And it's something you're going to see with microcaps here and there. But to give him benefit of the doubt, there's an upcoming earnings call on May 6th. He could easily speak about it then. If you guys are familiar with how Hydrate does things, typically there are actually time for people to ask questions. Just regular people, doesn't need to be an analyst or anything, it's a smaller company. So that being said, I'm pretty certain it does get asked, but the thing is he might reiterate the goal, and people are looking for an official guidance, because if you can believe the goal, well, this is an easy 10 bagger, but a lot of people simply can't believe that. They want to see something official in terms of guidance, and it's unfortunate he didn't give us this in the report, but I think it's something we may be able to look forward to. And the good news is, because we already know he didn't provide it, I would assume that's pretty priced in after 2 trading days. So the only thing that's not priced in is actually us getting it. So I don't know, look at it kind of like an anchor effect, I guess, but pretty excited about that. And unfortunately, I won't be able to ask the question in this, but if any of you guys are interested and actually want to ask him, you probably could yourself and he'd probably answer. But yeah, one thing I want to mention now about why the price probably dropped recently, and this is my idea, hard to confirm it. Essentially, Victory Square, which is their parent company, very, very important to them as they're a majority owner. They had their management cease trade order because they were worried about a late filing, right? So instead of the April 30th deadline, they were looking at May 30th. The CEO of Victory Square posts in the company's Discord, right? And he says that this is a preemptive measure and they do believe they're going to get it out on time, right? So the market brushes this off, and he says this is preemptive, maybe it's a bit late. You're doing this just to get it on time and just be safe, right? But essentially he was just pulling the leg, and now we're looking at June 30th. And he's telling the Discord they're still hoping to get it in by May 30th. So this is exactly what he said last time, and he lied last time, right? And I mean, I don't think this extends on forever and forever, but I think this announcement, I think this was really, really negative. And I think that Hydrate's drop today was more a price of this. Because I don't think the bear case on Hydrate is the numbers and the business. I mean, if you look at the numbers, you look at the business model, the potential, I mean, there'd be no reason to own another stock, right? But the risks really lie with execution, management, and having a parent company with such a poor track record is definitely a reason to be cautious. Definitely a reason to discount it. I mean, Victory Square has had 2 of their portfolio companies delist, so that's obviously not good. And essentially, this is pretty bad news. They have a huge role, and the CEO of Victory Square has lied numerous times. He said, like for example, KPIs will be provided in a couple weeks for Hydrate, and they don't get provided. He's mentioned a lot of things that aren't true. His word's not very reliable. At first, I did not really think that spread over to Hydrate's CEO, but a few things he's already lied about, perhaps directly, perhaps indirectly. But an example, small cap discoveries, he's saying we're going to see earnings in the 3rd week of April, and they literally file it, like, technically speaking, right after the deadline. So obviously that turned out not to be true. I don't know the exact reason for that. And then he also mentioned there would be the guidance provided Q1 or 2024 for the full year earnings, and they didn't. So I mean, perhaps he said it in such a way that the earnings call counts, but I mean, just this in general, right? Like, nobody's forcing these guys to say anything. Nobody's harassing them and saying you must say this. Nobody's really pressuring them too much, I'd imagine. But still, for whatever reason, they somehow feel the need to keep putting out their own deadlines and their own false lies, and they're just getting caught later. So that really is the bear case for Hydrate. Like, the business is fine, and ultimately speaking, if you ask me, do I think it's a long? Am I still long? I'd say yes. But that doesn't mean I can't deny the risks are huge. Like there's a lot of problems, and it all lies within management. Terrible track record on the parent company, lies left and right, or at least, if not to say lies, inconsistencies. But yeah, I mean, I do think this is still a buy just based on the numbers. Like the first two verticals, which are already proven, nothing new, doing well, nothing bad about that. And the new vertical, so far, like I've done my research, a lot of people online have done theirs, they've shared it. Independent research has shown that what management is saying is likely true. Their reluctance to turn it into official guidance, I'm not sure why. Perhaps their guidance needs to be based off something and the auditors aren't allow it. Perhaps they just are worried about some liability given they don't actually meet it. I don't know, but for now, they're just calling it a goal. They keep calling it a goal. They keep reiterating it. They keep saying it's conservative. I mean, if you're going to go to the point of lying and fraud, I'd imagine you'd be able to at least give it on an official basis. If they're trying to draw that line, I really don't have too much of an idea why. If you guys have an idea, maybe you can let me know. But I would imagine it's something else preventing them, and perhaps that gets solved with time. So I do believe sooner or later, they do turn that into an official guidance. And even if they don't, for whatever reason, I do think it's very, very possible for them to execute on that goal. And even if they don't achieve the goal, I mean, the goal is huge. It applies that they would like 10x. Even if they're like half their goal, it'd still be a very wonderful return. So that being said, I didn't have too much else to say, but I thought I'd just give a small update on this one. But yeah, I still think it's good. But like I mentioned in other videos, the risks are huge, and I don't want you guys to completely ignore them.